Hi everyone and welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Sarah and this is my little corner of the internet where I talk about knitting, yarn related stuff, and we have a little cozy coffee chat here and there. So if you think that's for you, then subscribe to the channel, stick around and leave a little yellow heart in the comments below so I know that you're here. I'm very grateful for that, and let's just deep dive into it, why knitting is such a high value hobby and what the benefits are. I think we massively underestimate what our hobbies do to us. Most of us choose our hobbies because they are fun, and yes, that's of course the 100% first step of getting into the motivation of doing something. But over time, they shape how we think and what our habits are and how patient we are and how creative we are. And then they develop us as a whole person, and soon it becomes a habit that you just implement into your daily life. It affects the people who we surround ourselves with. And personally, I think there is no other hobby or habit in my life that changed me so much to the better than knitting. So today we are talking about why knitting is such a high value hobby in a modern world that is constantly trying to speed you up. No matter if you're knitting for years or if you're new to knitting and just want to try it, it will definitely benefit you. Now, whenever I tell people that I knit or that this is my hobby, then their most common reaction is like, oh, my grandma used to do that, or oh, like a grandma, or don't you have a job? Don't you even work? You must have so much free time. And you can probably relate to that, like this happens to some of us all the time. Really, I can see people reframing me in their minds as like slightly too old for the interest I have, or a misplaced version of their grandma. But the funny thing is that for me it's the complete opposite of that image, because for me it's the jackpot. I see it as an investment in myself. And if you think about the people we associate with grandma hobbies, they actually share something pretty interesting. They know what matters to them, and they regulate their emotions in a very calm and grounded way. They are often surprisingly relaxed and just have a lot of fun spending their time doing their hobby for decades. So to explain high value a little bit more, let me break it down into 4 categories. There is a creative part, of course, there is a physical part, an intellectual part, and a social part in every hobby, and knitting completes this as a whole. The more of those values come together, the higher the benefit. Now, first things first, of course, knitting seems as a creative hobby because creativity is often described as the ability to turn imagination or emotions into something real, to take the ideas or emotion or inspiration and turn it into something that can be seen or felt or experienced by others. And at first glance, knitting hits that definition quite obviously. It's crafty and therefore it's creative. So yeah, it's a craft. You work with shapes and colors and the material that you form, and you make something with your hands. We often miss that knitting is not only creative on the obviously surface level. There is also another deeply creative layer underneath the surface. It's creative because you constantly make decisions from the start of your project until the finished result. You choose the color that sets the emotional tone of your project, and then you choose adjustments to fit your body type, your style, or your life. Even when you follow a pattern, then you're still interpreting it by the way you hold the yarn, by the way you choose to give the tension to the yarn, or by the slow rhythm that only your hands can create. What starts by following instructions turns into curiosity and getting into deeper knowledge of what you're actually doing. So what happens if I change this? What happens if I combine these techniques with these techniques? Or what happens if I just do this and this differently? And then in the end you just have a big basket of knowledge that you can just take little experiences and little parts out of and create your own designs, or you just don't depend on every little step on the pattern anymore. Now it's becoming something more than a craft. Now it's becoming a creative language. It's a way to translate your creativity into something in the real world, something from your imagination into something that you can touch and use. It's a way of translating your creativity and your imagination into something useful, into something real and practical, stitch by stitch. So yes, knitting is of course and very obviously creative, but there is another layer of creativity under the pure crafting. It always quietly trains you to think and to find new ways and new patterns of thinking and solving problems. Now it's not just making something anymore, it's having a lot of possibilities, and it just becomes normal and therefore easy for you. So it trains you to think in a more creative way, to learn how to solve problems, to realize that there are steps that you can take in between, and so it develops you as a creative person. That shift makes it such a high value hobby because it helps you developing your skills without you even noticing it, because guess what? It's just fun, and we all love learning along something that is fun, effortless, and still meaningful to you. And that's what makes it such a high value creative practice. It's so fun and you're so focused that you don't even realize that you're training your ability to solve complex problems. But creativity is only the first part of the story, because there is another layer of the physical aspect in knitting. Now, I would not say that it is totally physical like you would imagine a sport. It doesn't make you sweat or you don't work out or lift heavy weights, but still it's physical to a certain point and even deeper as you think. Because you, of course, need to use both of your hands at the same time doing different things, just a little bit like playing an instrument, like a piano or something. And that's known for what? Yeah, it stimulates both sides of your brain. So your ideas don't just stay flat or on a screen, you bring them into existence in a three-dimensional world. And by using your hands is where the physical aspect of knitting begins. So the interesting thing is that knitting is not a workout, but it is still a physical practice, just in a more quiet way. Because every stitch relies on your body working on a very coordinated rhythm, and that needs to be repetitive, held throughout a longer time. Your hands are engaged in a very fine motor movement, and your fingers guide the tension and create loops and do something with precision in real time. Your fingers guide the tension, loop the yarn, and form structure with a lot of precision. And over time, this of course strengthens your hand-eye coordination. Your eyes track pattern and stitches and motifs in real time, and they respond to it. They always know what's coming next, just like you would read, but you would read and still move your hands, just as you would write and think, or you play the piano and you follow the melody. You know where to put your fingers next, and that's something that's training your brain by also keeping engaged a physical component to it. And speaking of piano, then there is a rhythm to it. It's inherently rhythmic. If you've been a new knitter, then you might not experience this yet, but when you're a little bit more experienced, then you will definitely know the feeling of coming into a rhythm, and this is mostly followed up by a kind of getting into the flow. This rhythm has a very regulating effect on the body, and it also can be proven on screen with medical tests that it helps your body and nervous system to calm down and regulate itself. This is just your body responding to a very predictable and repetitive movement. And in that sense, knitting is often described as a very grounding activity, but I have also heard of people who were walking with their knitting, including me. I've been knitting on a treadmill for a couple of times, but to be honest, infinitely times more often on the couch, just sitting at a static place. But really it blends in your daily life. It's not something that you have to go to a special place to. It's just there, and therefore it's more accessible at any time, but still you have to use your body. It's not just something that you take from the outside. You also have to at least move your hands so you can activate your brain, and that movement and that coordination brings a very good connection to activating the body as a whole. And in general, you can say that it's always good to use your body to make something that you put on your body, and yeah, it's just a full circle moment that you experience when you finish knitting something and have that experience in life that everything just connects to everything. And the connection between body and creation and rhythm is what makes knitting quietly but powerfully physical. So now that we are in motion and put a lot of energy into creating our things, we realize that this is not just a craft for our hands. There is, of course, again, another layer to it. It's also a constant exercise for your brain as well. Your brain loves learning, and once we finish school, there are not that many meaningful challenges for our brains to learn and develop anymore. Even though learning is a never-ending process, after graduating, we don't put too much effort in it anymore. There are not too many meaningful challenges anymore, but this is what our brain loves. And often it's completely underestimated. Can say that knitting is very mindless, or it goes on autopilot and we can do it while watching TV or having a conversation, but it took quite a while and it was quite a way to get there, because when you start as a newbie, when you cast on your very first whatever garter stitch scarf, then you don't have that yet. Then you really need to practice and repeat and stay patient, and then you practice and repeat again. It's just like learning a language. First you learn a couple of words, and finally you get to France and order a croissant or something in a coffee shop. And that's not because you just woke up and learned a new language. That's just because you practice it and you learn throughout repetition. And that's the same with knitting, and our brain just loves it. It was a lot of practice and understanding and repeating all the same movement again and again and again until we actually get to know it into our muscle memory. So learning a new language and learning knitting is not too different from one another, because our brain just loves learning new skills and solving problems, and it really wants to be challenged for both of it. At the beginning, you follow instructions, but when you go further and further and further, you don't have to. You just make your own interpretations into it. And then you're understanding the construction, and you're figuring out how shapes are built up and how to change those. And you're working with gauge and tension and proportions, and you get to know what to do when you want to adjust something, or which kind of adjustments you have to make to get a certain result. And then you analyze your mistakes and not just blindly going further and further and repeating the same mistakes ever again. You understand what you do, and then you translate it into something that could be done better. Or you learn new techniques often mid-project, because you start with something you did already, and then in the mid-project there is something new and exciting, and it builds up on the skills that you already have, and it's easier for you because you already know how to go on autopilot with the tension or holding the yarn or whatsoever, but you already have skills that build up on another. Reading a pattern may just feel like a different language to you first. For example, I speak German in my daily life, but it's so incredibly hard for me to understand a German knitting pattern, because the language I learned to knit in was English. I only read English patterns, I only watch English podcasts, and that's just the language my brain works with. And whenever I have to read a German knitting pattern, I can hardly understand anything. I always have to look up what it would mean in English. Of course, I should understand it in German, but I just don't, because I have not practiced it and I don't ever use it. So that's just something new to me, and probably I should get a little bit better. So the longer you knit, the more obvious those things come to you, but there is always a learning curve and always a process that challenges your brain, because it's endless. You will always learn new things, and you will be at the point where certain things are very easy for you, but there is not a level cap. You can always level up and learn a little bit more. And at that point, most people don't think that they just knit for the sake of knitting anymore. They realize that they do engineering actually, and that they get more capable in their craft, and then therefore reach for the more complex problems, because that's just exciting and curious in a very fun way. So if we want to have something different to work on, then there is always something that challenges us a little bit, but it's not too meaningful. It's just for fun, and learning with fun is always a good idea. There's nothing better than fun maxing the thing out of it, you know? And that learning aspect is something that's a very important shift, because often it's seen as something that's very repetitive and mindless, and it happens like in the same way all the time. But I think that's only because it's slow. It's slow, and therefore it's not something that's very challenging, but that's not the case. It's like in a computer game, so it stimulates your brain to always adapt and learn and become better, and then stay on that level, repeat it for a little while, and then you go better and better and better. So there is something that's an endless learning curve. There is always a way of leveling up, but always a way of staying on the level where you are and enjoy it. So we can all agree that challenging our brains in a way that is fun and feels like fun and is very emotional attached is always a good idea to be open to new experiences. It opens the doors to new experiences and lets us, learn new things in a very slow way that lasts, because the repetition is just necessary throughout the whole process. So we reached point number 4. So now that we talked about engineering and solving problems and challenging our brains, you might be surprised that knitting, as first glance as a solitary hobby, is so much more social than you think. But to me, it's the most social hobby I've ever had. Yes, you spend a lot of time by yourself and in your little cozy bubble and probably in your head thinking about whatever you want to think about, but this is just a short moment of it. You are here on YouTube as a social media platform, listening to me talking about knitting in a very abstract way, but you are also interested in knitting. So this proves, this action of you and me talking through a camera, probably over like an ocean, being like an ocean apart, proves that this community and the sense of community in the knitting world is just amazing. For me, this is just the best proof that there are no borders in that creative community. Because the moment you step slightly deeper into it, you realize that there is a whole world of people out there who share the same interest and hobby as you, and that's just wonderful. We are all winners in this community, you included. This community is surprisingly huge and active and loving and caring, and honestly, I met most of my very good and close friends in this community. And yeah, you probably met other people knitting in the like real world or well outside the internet as well. And there are knitting nights in almost every community, and there are festivals where people meet and gather together for weekends just to chat about their hobby and have a good time and hang out together and just be connected. And I have seen that because I live in a very remote area, but even here we have knitting festivals scheduled for this year and for next year. And from last year's point of view, no one even talked about it. So it was not even an option, but it's coming, like it's getting more and more important. And even on platforms like Ravelry, there is so much support and community. And yes, of course, it's like kind of like a marketplace, but it's so much more. It's never just to use the product. It's always like the community aspect of everything that goes around it. It's just, there is almost no competition or comparison. Like not in like a winner or loser way. Never there was, and never I have experienced that. There is no who's faster or better or makes more or creates more or you're just sharing what you love, and then you find other people who love the same thing. And this is something that is very unique, and especially in this community there is so much love and so much support, and you can see it on YouTube. I mean, there are only supporters on those channels, and that's very unique, and that should be treated like a little treasure. It just creates connection over shared creativity, and sharing creativity can feel very intimate to some people, and knowing that that community really appreciates that is very valuable. So what I wanted to say is that this creative energy and that hobby and that like social support feels very special to me. And the best proof is like when you comment on that video or you post a little yellow heart, then always, if you did this, I already probably did it for you too, I'm like, thank you, whatever your name is, for taking your time, spending time with me, and I really hope you had a great time and created something that means something to you, and yeah, I'm just happy to be a part of it. And this makes me very emotional because the knitting community just makes me emotional all the time. Great, that was emotional. Most hobbies give you one or two things out, one or two aspects of those, but knitting, I would say, gives you all four of that. It keeps your hands busy, your mind engaged, your creativity in flow, and your relationships growing, and that's just very high value. It's one of the few activities that makes you develop as a whole person, and that's why so many people stick to it for decades. Like everyone I know who once started knitting never quitted it completely. It was always a time in life when they came back to it. So if this is something you needed to hear today, or if this is just to prove why knitting is just as awesome as you think it is, then please leave a little comment below or a little yellow heart so I know that you are here and that you stick until the very end. Let me know what your thoughts throughout this whole video were, and until next time, see you soon. Take care of you and happy knitting. Bye bye.